Good morning, everybody. My name is Jay, and I will be introducing you to Phil's presentation this morning on getting started with GitLab CL, GitLab runners, and Ansible. So without further delay, here's Phil.
Morning, folks. Yes, so we're going to take a look at some of this capability within GitLab. Um, there's a number of slides, of course, I'm going to go through. I'm going to click through a quick overview of getting one of these off and running, and then there is 15 to 20 minutes at the end for folks to be able to try this themselves. And again, you'll see this in a second when we get to the polls, but uh, the I can log into git.doit, that link I just put in, will be one of the things. Anybody with a UW-Madison net ID should be able to get in there. If you have a if you're from UW system and you have a UW-Madison net ID, I think it'll work. Otherwise, you could go to gitlab.com and maybe be able to follow through there. The steps should be incredibly similar. But anyways, thanks for making it to the presentation today. My name is Phil Jochimsen, and let's make the slides going. Right, the introduction. Okay, so I've been at the UW for over 20 years, doing a lot of different IT stuff, usually related to web servers. Um, Work with the shared hosting team or the Do It web hosting team most recently, and I had led the software and load testing team for a while, and I was on the Wisco team for quite a while as well. I'm a co-organizer for the DevSecOps community of practice, along with two other folks, one who more represents the security side of things and one who more represents the development side. And two of the things I end up doing, and why I've learned anything in my career is these two. Why does it work this way, or how do we make this better? So I'm always curious about how stuff works. And that's a bit of why I was doing this anyways, right? Like I had to go through the process of what is this? Is this useful? How does this work? Things like that. So here's our, again, full agenda for today. We can talk about some definitions, the concept of the GitLab runner, if you even need one, show you a little bit about what we do in web hosting with Ansible and Gitlab CI, and there's going to be some lab time for you folks to actually click through this yourselves. There's going to be enough information in the slides when we get those uploaded, so you have like all of the screenshots of I need to go from step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So, and here's our poll. If we could get that up, that would be awesome. 5 questions is just so I have an idea of who's in the room, and if I could craft the presentation to better fit that. Put our music back on, probably. We've got about 3 minutes here. So go ahead and fill those out. So 5 different questions. If that is not working, please tell us in the chat and we will try again.
We're getting results in.
Awesome. Thanks for participating, folks. Excellent point. Thank you for that, Peyton. I believe all the questions are optional, so if you like, don't select. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Yeah, so that must have been an oversight when I created those questions. Cool. Yeah, we're getting a bunch of folks going. Thank you for again participating in the poll. Again, it really does help for me to have an idea like who's actually in the room. You know, in person we'd be like raising hands and stuff. Obviously, this is virtual, so. Give this maybe just one more minute, I think. It's been at about 2 minutes. It's about 30, well, it gives me 25 more seconds. So and I was going to wrap that up and then was it do the display results. Yeah, Jay, it's this is a copyright free song, so like that was one of the things I was trying to track down, so I didn't have to specifically go get a licensing arrangement for it. So all right, so I think we're gonna wrap that poll. Yes, is that something you needed to click then? Awesome. Sweet. So again, I'd say pretty even mix of job types for folks. Got maybe some more in development here, and then obviously a bunch of folks who are curious about things. I've got a lot of people with some GitLab experience. That's cool. We've got some with pipeline because we did forget the none. Just that's the thing. And let's see here then. Cool. And then we've got some folks that are going to be able to join us for the hands-on lab. And yes, like I said, the slides will be available for you to be able to do this on your own later, which for me, I like the idea of getting started, but then I definitely want to go back and understand each one of those steps on my own. Okay, so if anybody had any issue, or when we get to it later, if anybody has any issue logging into Git.do it, let us know, put it in the chat and stuff. But like I said, at least as far as UW-Madison NetID, that one's a straight shot in. Otherwise, there are also some additional self-hosted environments on campus. These would work as well. There might be one or two tweaks for which runner you get. And then gitlab.com would be another way to get in there. Cool. All right, I think I'm going to click stop sharing, so hopefully that works, I think. So that seems like that pulled that back, hopefully. Is that right?
Yeah, it worked. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. All right, so if you still see the slides, hopefully that just switched, right?
Yes.
Yep. Good to
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. So again, what is GitLab CI? Why is it useful? Like I said, we're going to talk about a little bit of the definitions here as well. So CI/CD is continuous integration and continuous delivery. There's some folks who are going to have very long definitions of this. I just think of it as like all of the steps necessary after I make a change to code in order for it to get out to customers or the public to be able to use. So there's lots of people who will split hairs over exactly what that is, but if you just think of like if I make a change, so like let's say I've got a bug and I fix the bug, what are all the things that need to happen in order for it to get out to the customers? And the idea here, the word why they keep using the word continuous, is that without like a lot of human intervention. In other words, how much of that can we automate so I don't have to save the file, upload the file, package it inside of something, update a config, and then figure out which machines need the update, which ones don't need it, right? If we can take care of all that. Yeah, the thing on the bottom then you'll see I had CI/CD, and then inside of that, and at least as far as the terminology that GitLab specifically uses, they call them pipelines. There's other things. There's GitHub Actions. I've used Jenkins a bunch in the past as well. They've got different names for each one of these things, but it's the same general idea. So a pipeline is like kind of all of the stuff in order to get that code pushed out. Inside of a pipeline for GitLab, we have stages, and again, examples like that would include like the test stage. You want to check to see, linting or do security testing, something like that, and then maybe a deployment stage. The jobs are the individual things inside. So one of the examples we have with shared hosting was that we've got two different types of linters. Those are two jobs that sit inside the test stage. And then the runner is just the thing that actually runs all of the stuff. So there's reasons why you might use your own, at least as far as the one that's provided by Git.do it, the shared runner. There's a lot of value in that. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So again, if any of those definitions don't make sense, let me know, and we can go in there a little bit further. But again, general idea, talk about changes to code, getting out to production, and all of these things are just breakdowns of that in terms of what do we need to do to have that happen with the least amount of human intervention, so it can happen as quick as possible, and we get the same kind of results every time. Personally, this is what I think of it as. It's like a force multiplier. It's the ability to get some, if you will, robots to do as much of the work for you. Anything that's repetitive, or we do it the same way every time, and that can be done accurately, so we don't have, me typoing a file name, me, sending it to the wrong server, something like that. Anything related to building software, configuring and deploying infrastructure, all of these are good use cases. Um, there's some real interesting stuff that folks have done, even when for like writing a novel using Git as the version control for the novel, and the steps that they need in order for it to produce a well formatted PDF or well formatted file at the end. There's a lot of options to be able to do stuff. Here in IT, we end up doing a lot of stuff with deploying and building software, and deploying and configuring infrastructure. So those are the ones I mainly look at. So this one, I'm going to switch my share here, but I'm basically going to go through a few steps, and this is effectively what we're going to do later. But I'm going to click through here very quickly just so you can see how fast it's possible to get something working. Let me switch my share. One moment. See if that worked. Okay, so hopefully that's switched. And this is just the git.doit login page. Specifically, I'm going to head over here to the netid login piece, which if I did this right, awesome. So it sends me straight through. I'm creating a new project or a new repository if you use the Git terms. It's going to be a blank project. I'm going to give it keyword, there we go, test CI. I think this is the second one I need to do. I'm going to pick this out to sit in my namespace here specifically. And again, you'd have your own. I'm going to keep the README. I'm not going to do the security testing bit at this point. So I've created the project. Now the next thing I need to do, where is it? Yeah, adding a file. Awesome. And there's a very specific file name. Again, we will talk about that. So it's .gitlab-ci.yaml, so YML. And once it does that, you can see it recognizes, hey, look, we got some templates. You will notice there is a lot of stuff in here. And so this was one of the other kind of values too, is that there's a lot of different things that you could do. This is, it's basically lifted straight from some of their documentation about how to get started, which again, got a link at the end of the presentation for that. Main thing, you'll see there are 3 stages we've got, and there's things inside each of those stages. So like in this case, they had 2 things that happened in the test stage. And I've got one additional piece I need to grab. There we go. I'll talk about this later. This is specifically calling out to make sure the right runner actually gets it. And let's see, that should be it. Cool. I'm gonna add a new file, lab ci yaml. Committing to main, and that should be all I need to do in order for this to actually start a pipeline for us, which I think is going to be this one. I'm gonna do a little. Oh, yep. See, it's already off and running. Cool. So click through there. This is a visual representation of what's inside that that YAML file for the configuration. And I think as soon as this one passes, I'm going to hit refresh here once. Still going. This does lead a little bit into one of the next things, which is whether or not you need your own runner. And the question is whether or not, like, how fast do you need stuff to run? If a bunch of us do this at the same time later on in the lab, it's like we are probably going to see a little bit of delays because there is effort, we'll say, with actually getting that stuff started. But there it goes, off and running. And what you can see is a lot of detail here, but effectively this is telling you all of the stuff on the command line that it did in order to start literally just providing an echo statement, right? Look at me, I've compiled something. All right, so that is how quickly you can actually get one of those things off and running. And let me head back to the slides. Okay. Yep, so went through all this. New repo, put in some template, added the runner definition, watch it run. So again, we're going to go through that step by step later for more detail. Um,
Just to let you know, Phil, we can't see your slides.
Interesting. I did not hit share. Finish hitting share. I think that is one of my Zoom things. How about now?
Wonderful. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you. By the way, don't let me talk for 10 minutes and be like, we can't see anything. It's like, yeah, no, thank you. Um, sorry. So this is the steps that I just went through, right? We had some of the documentation for CI. That's one of the links we'll have later in the end of the slides. Created a repo or new project, added that specifically named config file, gave it some template code, added the runner definition so we could use the shared runner that git.doit has configured, commit it, watch it run. All right, and right, screenshots for later if you wanted to see part of what we went through. And in the event the live demo did not work. So cool. So talking about the runners, again, these are the things that actually do the work. It's, do you need a dedicated runner? A lot of folks enter this with like, oh yeah, I definitely need one. Are you sure? Like, are you really sure? Uh, the It took a bit before I had discovered this information to wrap my head around, which was like you can you can tell the runner to go get any Docker container from just about anywhere. So there's a lot of options for either stuff that's like official images that are already out on Docker Hub, to ones that you've made yourself, right? So like if you've got a very unique build process that has, you fill in the blank, like 10, 20 different unique bits of software that your project needs in order to build correctly, you can make a Docker container that has all that stuff in there. And so each time the job runs, right, it doesn't need to like install Maven, install install some libraries for CSS or JavaScript, or install Nginx or install Node.js. Film like you don't have to do all of that. It could have been in a Docker container that could get loaded up. Um, you get many things out on Docker Hub. Some of the ones that I found that were useful were this project that's just on GitLab from a group that put together called Pipeline Components. And it turns out there's a few things in there. Those are not official images from GitLab themselves, but I was looking for two simple things. One was YAML lint and Ansible lint, and both of those for me qualify as incredibly small containers, so they start very quickly. And I don't need to run my own runner in order to use those. So the shared runner is awesome. If there's a lot of us asking for a lot of things to happen at the same time, there can be just delays. In other words, like timing issues with that. So it's a question your team might want to take care of. The other thing might be a security thing, right? So like if you've got a certain type of build process that has to happen in a very secured environment, and maybe it's because it's going to pull data from multiple restricted data services, for example. Putting a runner inside there might be one of the reasons why you'd be like, yeah, that's actually a great idea. I need to make my own runner. We're going to keep our own runner so that we can better or more easily deal with some of the security implications or security concerns during again, whether it's the actual compilation process or maybe even the deployment process, right? So if I had a restricted data server, I don't want to have create all of the unique holes through the firewall, etc., in order to get deployment to happen. I might just want to put a runner in there, and that the runner can grab from the places that it can only see while it's in that restricted environment. So there's a few reasons like that, but effectively try using the shared runner for as long as possible. The other background bit of technical info: the shared runner that the Git.doit instance runs are basically Docker containers that are out in Amazon, right? So it starts up new things out in Amazon, runs what you need to have happen, and then delivers the result back, right? Whether that's completed code or like, hey, look, I outputted some echo statements to the command line. All right. So as far as installation, again, this is great for reference later. For the web hosting group, we ended up doing this inside of Ansible, and so this was an example task, an Ansible task, in order to actually get that installed. We use Red Hat servers that are provided by Do It SEO, and you can use DNF, Yum. If you have Debian, Ubuntu, it's like APT is a thing, so go for it. The registration does require the unique identifier. That's part of the instructions, how you obtain that unique identifier. And again, effectively what happens is that the runner runs all of the time that it's there, waiting to hear, hey, should I go do something? So of note, though, the user that it actually runs as is called GitLab-runner. In our case, we ended up having a lot of the Ansible stuff use a different user, so Ansible-runner. And again, with Ansible, there were ways to be able to say, hey, I want this to execute as, you could say like, execute as root, right? So it's like using sudo, or you could have it run as a different user. And so being able to use the Ansible-runner user that we had decided to create allowed us a little bit more ease of use for being able to share the necessary SSH keys to allow deployments to happen to the servers that we need, which is a bit of what we do here in web hosting. Yeah, this idea, just kind of the universal executor, is if I can do something on the command line, I can have it as a created as a playbook in Ansible and have a GitLab CI job fire it off. There's like scheduling considerations, so if I've got something that needs to happen once a day, I could do that, right? Or once a week, whatever. So it's a scheduling ability. Get it to run on all of the servers or just one of the servers. Any of that sort of consistency things have been super useful. And then the other bits is that this gives the team kind of an easier way to see it. So also if someone's not super familiar with the command line, or we have someone in management, it's like this isn't what they do. This is a web interface they can actually see, like, well, what happened, right? So if a bunch of stuff goes wrong at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, like let's say pick a day, Tuesday this last week, something happened at 4 p.m. If they come here and they see that there was a deployment of some sort at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, we've got a pretty strong correlation. Maybe that's the thing that needs to be rolled back, right? So being able to give that to the team as far as like, you can see some of the stuff that happens, and we've got a timeline. And again, the fact that a lot of the stuff is actually in version control also means that we've also got an ability to see, well, what was, yes, we pushed out a new version of the file. When was that file updated? And kind of all that just wraps around into being real useful. Can add error handling. There's a whole lot of things. But again, I just kind of think of it as like, all right, if I had in the past done this, one-off on a server from the command line, I want, as much as possible, I want to try to do the same thing across all of them. Or have very specific reasons, like the test servers might get something totally different than the production servers, but those are two different things, right? Or at least they could be. Let's see what else we got. Right, okay, so we're triggering Ansible to configure different web servers. Trying, again, any of the stuff that we're, low-hanging fruit for being able to do this is like, well, what is hard to do, what's annoying, what's painful, what's any of the stuff where we've had a lot of time troubleshooting, like the differences between the servers, and anything we can do to try to make that stuff more consistent. Yeah, and then, right, as this was the rest I mentioned before, so scheduling is a possibility. You don't have to do that. It can all be manual. And I'll show here, and let's see if I can get to the right place. I will switch shares one more time. So we've got a few. Yeah, there we go. Okay, give me one more second. I'll see if I can switch sharing. Playbook, that's got to be it. Okay. All right, so this was one of the Ansible playbooks we have. And again, you just kind of go through what we have here. It's specifically targeting our Red Hat 9 production servers. It's about, it's a generic name. It's about fail to ban. We're telling it to use that Ansible run user I talked about in order to log into the server. Once it gets there, it's actually going to end up running as root. So this is like again, like using sudo. And this was one of the files, right? The jail file for fail to ban. We updated a very specific parameter. And now, what this gives me though is like, I now know whenever we run this, it's going to check that, see if 7200 is what that parameter is configured to. If it's not, it's going to update it, and it's going to tell me which one, which server had a difference on that. All right, and so that kind of that useful feedback from Ansible about like, hey, I had to update, just one of the servers. If it was something we said previously, it shouldn't be different unless something else came and changed it, which again might have been us as a human, right? Maybe we had a reason to set that number longer or shorter, maybe just for the purposes of testing, right? Let me see some other stuff I've got. Okay, so this is part of our longer, again, GitLab-CI.yaml file. And very similar here. I mentioned I had there's two things in the test stage. These are just two different types of linting. One's the YAML lint, which is kind of the first cut to be like, did we get the syntax right for Ansible? And then the second one's specifically the Ansible lint, which if you got the syntax right as a YAML file, but there's something wrong with the way you're referring to the Ansible command specifically, this is gonna call that out. And then just a quick look at what the pipeline looks like. This is, again, there's definitely some different options here. This one, job dependencies. I just wanted to show that. So we have one of changing the my.cnf. Again, that's for MySQL. And what we do with this one is that the test one deploys upon hitting that button. The option to deploy to production only happens once the test one has been ran. There's a very specific reason for this. MySQL doesn't have a way to gracefully pick up a new config out of my.cnf while it's running. There's some other ways to approach this, but it means that, like in this case, we're going to be probably scheduling a specific outage related to that, or to make sure that we're doing it during the maintenance window for those servers. So those are some additional examples. Let's see here. Pull back up the slides, see if I get that right this time. Awesome. All right, and cool. So now we are at the lab time. If I think I've got this right, is it still got 23 minutes? Does that sound about right? Cool. So please use the chat if you're having any issues with these steps. I'm probably gonna just check in here just a little bit to make sure we've got folks following along that wanted to. All right, so yeah, folks, if you head to git.doit, you want to click on that one for UW-Madison NetID. Again, that's going to give you the NetID password prompt and then your MFA Duo prompt as well. So just ask the question. If anybody has an issue with this, please put it in chat. We'll either wait a second longer or see if we can specifically help you out. Upon getting in here, then like I said, you're going to click that new project option. The upper right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that link. Appreciate it. And upon clicking through that, you're going to be using create a blank project. Something to come back later and take a look at. There's some very interesting templates they have in there. Yeah, something to take a look at. There are, again, a lot of these things they've got sort of an interesting way to sort of bootstrap yourself into getting started with stuff. The blank project, again, we're going to pick a project name, test something, right? Pick it, fill in whichever you like there. And then this namespace part, yeah, so pick a group or a namespace. At least for me, that drop down is like really, really, really long. So I'm gonna, I typed in Jochimsen to try to get my personal space to show up. I guess I'm not 100% sure how the naming goes with that, but if you start with your last name, it should narrow it down to what you have, and you'll notice the project slug part will automatically populate. If you keep it private, that is what I'd recommend in this case. All right, thanks, Ken. Yeah, so your NetID just dropped in, and that's, I don't remember if I configured that for me to be like Phil-Jochimsen or what, but yes. So it should be your name or something unique for you. And when it's private like this, it's going to be in your space, and nobody else has access unless you've specifically given them permission to see it. When you're working with your group, of course, things like internal or sometimes public, right, might be the right answer. I would suggest, because I don't have it in this picture, but I would suggest keeping the initialize repository with README checked. It's just the screen looks a little different when you don't have any files in there whatsoever. But either way, that will work. Yep, and then go ahead, click Create Project. You have tons of other groups. Yeah, exactly. Alright. And then at least, again, this is what I was seeing. There's I guess those two things in the box are alerts that can be dismissed. All right. Folks doing good so far? Again, please let us know in the chat. We can, or come out, come off mute. That's fine too. So this is how it should look like. Let's see here. It's the plus button next to. Let's see if I called it up. Yeah. So the plus button next to the project name allows you to pick an upload, anything like that. But we're going to do a new file. Okay, and then that will take us to the next screen. And again, that's the specific name. Let me put that in here. So .gitlab ci.yaml, YML. So that's the file name. And then getting started, so so it's getting dash started. Now, if anybody doesn't see that, that's fine as well. One of the links for, let's see if I get this right. Is it this one? Got the right one. Yeah, no. This link again is one of the links we provide later on at the end of the thing. This effectively goes through all the steps we're doing. A lot of the steps we're doing today. There's one additional one, and we'll have folks. I'm purposely having us make a mistake here so we can learn something as well. All right, so you've got that file name, and then you're applying that getting started template, and then you can take a look at that for a minute. That's fine. But when you commit changes, you do have to give it a comment as is standard with Git. All right. So I decided to stick with information about the name of the file I just had. Then you hit that commit changes button. Okay. No, good. Let me back up one sec, John. So, let's see. You said you didn't get the option to apply a template. All right. Let's take a look at that. Okay. And then it appeared. All right. So yeah, my first, well, if it never appears, my first guess would be that file name wasn't exactly right. Whether it was like you put YAML, maybe that doesn't work. I don't know. Or there was something else about it that was just a little off. I'm just gonna quick check, see what other. Okay. If you have a million browser tabs open, then there may be a delay on the asynchronous request to add that. Again, behind the scenes, your browser is like, oh wait, I know what that file name is. Let me go get this next dropdown for you. It's a new file and then prompts for a file name at the top. Interesting. Okay. Let's see. And I'm trying to remember if. All right. Right. Okay. So Ken, in the file name field there, if you type in .gitlab -ci.yaml, I think that's a little further up in the chat there. What should happen is it should then give you a drop-down about applying a template. And please let me know if that does not. Does anybody else have that issue? I guess too. Be put in. Show it for me in the first file. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll suggest that maybe this isn't. I'm going to call it the most specifically usability kind of thing, right? That until you enter that specially recognized file name, it doesn't even know. Yeah, it doesn't show you this extra bit of functionality. Let's see here. Oh, I messed something up. 1 second. Try this again. So yeah, so this is again what I see. Um, and until I finish typing, oops, and it's only after I enter the last L. Yeah, so you only want to have that L. Does it pop that drop down to the right? I'll try my test of. It also doesn't recognize YAML. Um, okay. Never use it that way. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, John. Yeah, John Muth. Exact. Yeah. So I guess this is me pronouncing YML YAML, even though yes, generally speaking. Yeah. And so let's talk about just the GitLab licensing for a second. So UW-Madison specifically has licensed GitLab. I believe it's still called the enterprise level, and that allows more than one installation on campus. So I'm not sure if there's an actual limit, but there are folks on campus running the enterprise self-hosted, basically along with or because of that licensing. Um, there are there are folks who've been given a UW-Madison NetID, so I say very commonly in UW system, when there's some relation. So in the case of the web hosting group, we've got folks at UW system who use Git to push updates to their website out to the shared hosting servers. And so that's considered an inbound use case or inbounds use case, something in scope. And that's how that works out. Let's see if we've got any other. Yeah, interesting. I want to take a look at that for a second. And yes, the actual so git.doit is specifically a virtual machine in one of the data centers here on campus. So it's actually it's not third party hosted. It's not SaaS. Um, Dirk, I guess let me know if that was enough information or if you got some more things. We can always follow up later too. So storage limits, fantastic question. I don't know off the top of my head. There is a whole bunch of information. Let me hold over to. I'm trying to remember if just GitLab, I think. See if I got this right. Yeah, so just I would say start here. You get some more information about what's there. Um, I'm trying to remember. So there was I think it's SMPH had a GitLab instance. I don't remember if they still have it, and I think the libraries has an instance. And I don't personally actually know all of the rest of the self-hosted installations on campus. Um, the storage limits are an interesting question, and the reason I say it's interesting is that um, so Git is a version control system. It is not necessarily a file storage system. And so just to try to head off at the pass, if you've got the square peg round hole situation thing where you've got a lot of digital assets, this like version control might not be the best approach. Something you'd want to think about. The actual limits again, there's contact information. If it doesn't say it in the KB docs, there's definitely contact information for getting a hold of the team to ask that. And if you do have a lot of files, and I'm just going to say a lot, like let's say I've got tens or hundreds of gigabytes of files that I want, first of all, that I want to version control, um, then that would be something I would highly recommend talking to that team about, regardless of exactly what the limits are listed in the KB, if they are listed there. So there also might be, maybe I'll mention this another thing too. So the CI thing doesn't have to only use files that are inside of git.doit. There are many ways to use this runner idea triggering jobs that does something with different repositories. So you could call out to like git.doit could call to have something happen or go get files from one of the self-hosted on campus. It could be git.com or gitlab.com, GitHub. You fill in the blank, right? There could be any number of things. Hopefully that provides some additional context there. Name of the configuration file. Okay, yeah, awesome. And then, sorry, that was Brent. Awesome. I actually did not even know that that is what is telling us that's what the file name is. That's cool. All right. Let's see here. Storage. Okay. Yes. Become bigger. Question. Right. And so this is a great example. Container registries. Like you could have a container registry hosted anywhere, and the container itself could still get pulled in as a runner. Or if the container registry doesn't need to be specifically on Git.do it for some particular reason. Again, maybe it's just because the images are so large. They could be located wherever, right? In Amazon, Azure, GCP, the research drive, the local S3 storage, any of those things are certainly possible things as well. Cool. Let me head back to the slides and we'll see if we can keep going here. Let's see, where did if I've even shared the right thing? Did I share the right thing or did I shut it down? Okay, is that okay? Hopefully that's back to the slides if I clicked on the correct thing.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Awesome, thank you. Cool. All right, so we talked about the file name, make the changes, commit the message. All right, and this was the error I wanted to show you folks. So if you did this, yeah, awesome catch. So if you did this exactly as I said, you're going to sit in. It's going to get to pending, and there's multiple ways to get here, right? So pending is the one that's going to show up right after you hit commit, and you'll get that like that little circle thing. I think if you hover, that's when it pops out the word pending. You can click on that, and you're gonna get real close to where we want to head next. Otherwise, the left navigation, which if you have it wide enough, the left navigation will always be there. So you'll see like all those ones about project, build, secure, deploy, all that kind of stuff. Or I think I've got here. See if I can actually do this. All right, let's try something out. There we go. That little thing. Otherwise, that little icon or logo is the thing that will cause this left nav to pop out, and then you get this ability. If you go down to build and pipelines or jobs, any one of those would be fine. You end up in a few places that give us some of this information, right? So now this one is, I guess what we got? It's inside the pipeline, and then if you wanted to see inside the job, you could select again like kind of that. You'll see the pause thing. And you'll see that the job has not started. And it tells you why, right? It says it's stuck because the project does not have any runners online to assign to it. And again, this is part of in this case the intentional configuration. Okay, if you give me 1 second, switch a share over to that. Let's do this right. Share. All right, so we'll do two things here. There we go, chat. Awesome. Okay, so this KB doc has information about the shared runner, and specifically there's a bit of code, which is the next thing I will paste, that we're going to put into the CI file itself. So if you head back to that specific file, that .gitlab-ci.yaml, we're going to be, again, copying this code. And let's see, I'm just going to go through this with you folks as well. So apply the template. Okay. And you want to put it at the top. So I guess what I got, lines 1 through 17 are comments. I'm just going to make a little bit of space and paste that stuff in. You should see this like that Docker like lights up red. And like you shouldn't have any other interesting colors, I don't think. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, so you folks want to hit commit for that. And again, let me jump back to the slides. Awesome. And right. So you can use either just kind of edit the single file, open a web ID, or use the pipeline editor. There's a few more things in the pipeline editor that kind of help you figure out what's going on as far as being specifically a pipeline file. But there we go again. That's those three lines you folks can add in. Once you've committed that, again, this job runs on commit, so you should start to see after maybe a second or two that thing will come up. From time to time, I've had to hit refresh in the browser. That some of those asynchronous things don't actually fire off. This is also, again, because if there's a lot of us doing this at the same time, it would be incredibly common for us to run into some waits. And I think, again, you folks saw that when I did it earlier, where it was, I think it said it nearly took a minute for at least my little job to start. And it said it was queued, so it's not canceled. It's going to run when it gets its chance. So, I guess then to ask for anybody who's following along, like, did it finish for you, or is it still put in the the pending status? I'm personally not going to run it again because I don't want us to have even more people getting in there and trying to think. Okay, yeah. So we've got some pending. Yep. All right. Well, we'll just hold out here for a second or two. Um, One of the yeah, it's a queue. So right, whoever got to it first, would be the one to run next. Um, and again, the idea is that as a shared runner, though, it is flexible. It is possible for them to configure more simultaneous jobs to execute at the same time, and there's various scheduling things. So it could even be like during business hours, like we could end up having more shared runners. And I know from time to time I've talked to Ben Sousa and John Hare, who are on the team for shared tools that do this, about whether or not adding more runners makes sense. Again, it's AWS, so everything we run costs money. It's just a question of how many do we want it to be able to fire up at the same time. Um, but if in your pipeline you've got something very, very critical from a time standpoint, and you have the resources, whether it's already a utility server of some sort, or a server that just if it's not super busy most of the time, you could install your own runner. That's certainly an option. Um, and it is possible for you to configure your own AWS. Again, we'll call it like auto scaling or dynamic runners. Um, just like what the team did, the GitLab team did on campus. I assume they're using the spot thing. That's a good point, Ken. That also might be like around Christmas time. Like maybe it always takes longer or something. But this is stuff to keep in mind. You probably, generally speaking, you're going to be probably really surprised how far you can get with just using the shared runner that's in there. Also of thanks, Ben. Also of note, I did not specifically tell Ben that we might have like 100 people trying to run three little jobs that basically echo to the screen at this moment. So I did not actually prepare him to go do anything different with the config. However, you folks should start to see those things chewing through, because each one of those is going to be run very, very quickly because there's not a lot of work to get done. I'm trying to think if I've got right, and so when you click in here, and this is definitely something you should do, is do some exploration of like what does it look like when I look at pipelines? What does it look like when I look at jobs? There's a number of different visuals for seeing what stuff happens. This one again, of course, it's the full pipeline, so you see all the stuff in a row where build has to finish before anything in test runs, test has to finish before anything in deploy runs. And again, these examples all just produce commenting on the line. Okay, excellent. Glad to. Okay, see, yeah, but the point is, it's like you'll notice it'll say like elapsed time or something like for actual running. It's incredibly short for these, right? And even in the cases of the ones that we used in web hosting, like for doing YAML checks, like once that container starts, it runs one thing on the command line, and in our case, maybe it's checking 10, 20, 50 files, something like that. It, that actual process, you know, if I ran it by hand, like it does not, it takes seconds, right? And same thing for a container. It's just like, hey, I looked at all of them. Your syntax is fine, and now it's dead. It's gone. There are no leftover artifacts except what was handed back at the end of the job, um, which is a good, from a security standpoint, keeping that in mind too, right? The runner starts the thing up, does your work, returns only the output of that job, and then it's gone. It's deleted. The next person comes in and they ask for a different Docker image to run different code to do different things, and those are completely separate. There's no overlap. So it's a really good security model for that as well. Let's see. I'm trying to remember how many other screenshots I had here. Oh, right. And then, yeah, this is what I meant, right? So you got the, like, how long did it run? It ran for 5 seconds. In this case, I got lucky when I fired that one off. It only was queued for 0 seconds, right? Um, and again, all that detail. If you're getting errors, that's the other neat part, right? Like this level of detail means that I can find out what on earth happened inside there and what went wrong. Let's see how many more of these I've got. Okay, that is what I did. First of all, is anybody still stuck on either waiting for their job or did the CI that wanted to edits to the CI file, did that work? Anything like that. And again, you can come off. Yes, Jay. You can come off mute if you need to.
Mine is still pending, but don't worry about it. I was probably the last one who sent it.
Okay. Yeah, and this is a production instance, so there are other jobs that are running. I mean, my okay. All right. Well, then, if folks still have a couple of pendings, that's fine. Are there other questions? If you want to put that in chat. Um, Probably the big thing overall is are there things that this presentation did not give you that you thought you were going to get out of it? And then the reason I bring that up is that I am certainly available to talk, to provide links, resources, you fill in the blank, with anything that you're looking for.
Hey
Um,
Phil, would you mind
go.
dropping your email address in the chat? That way people
Yeah,
can shoot you an email if they need to.
that is
And then,
fine.
folks, we got about like 7 minutes here for questions. So yeah, feel free to unmute, ask anything you got.
I have a question about runners, if that's okay.
Sure.
Who can create them? Just anybody? And is there a limit on how many runners we can create?
You're talking about for making your own?
Yeah.
Yes. So no, as far as I'm aware, like you can do whatever. Um, I assume maybe GitLab has some kind of like I'm gonna say maybe hundreds, who knows, limitation. But the idea that I don't know. Yeah, let's look it up. But
So,
if you've got two or three and you're like, hey, we need five more, like sure, right? There shouldn't be any issue with that. Again, to talk
okay.
about the way that the shared runner is set up is that so the shared tools team that does the work for Git.do it determined however many they need or that they wanted to have simultaneously available or again because auto scaling can go from one runner to pick a number, right? Amazon does
Right.
not care how many things you start up, so that could be in the hundreds if you really felt like it. But the there are going to be permissions inside of a project for who might actually have access to the page to say I would like to have a runner in this certain project or inside of this uh, GitLab repository. So that's maybe another thing to think about. If
Mhm.
so, I'll just use a hypothetical example. So let's say my team doesn't have like we've been granted like read access to a repository. Um, and maybe the best place to do something for a CI job might actually be in that repository, but with only read access, I don't have an ability to add a runner for them and configure it and get the code to run. There might be ways inside of my own projects that I can pull in the contents of that repository to still do like whatever it is, a compilation or making a Docker container. You fill in the blank. Um, so that might be something. And if I recall, it seemed to me at least a lot of the stuff for about permissions level in GitLab is more like Like the option isn't even there. Like you don't even see the option as opposed to being an option that's grayed out to give you a visual indication that you're not seeing everything because your permission level isn't, owner on the repository.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just gonna GitLab number of runner limits. We'll just see, just to see if they say something. But like I think theoretically there's no. Yeah, I don't. Well, it's users.
Yeah, no, the use case that you mentioned actually is something hypothetical that it was just came to my mind. Okay, what in this situation can we create our own?
And Phil, there's a question in chat for you too.
Sure. Just give me one more second. I'm just gonna see if I've got a. Yeah. Okay. Here you go. All right. So this is for GitLab.com. They have registered group runners or project runners, and each of those are set to a maximum of 1,000. Um, Again, our actual configuration here on campus might be a little different because it takes effort if you needed to go start up 1,000 things somewhere. Um, Again, kind of
Yeah,
back to the shared runner thing though, it would be very common for if your team did determine, again, let's say for speed's sake and maybe for security's sake, we configure our own runner. Um, that by itself might already take care of like any of your concerns about like getting stuff to run fast in a secure place. In other words, if you know it's only your team doing stuff, you might not need more than one anyways.
yeah, no, that's good. Thank you very much, Phil.
Yeah, because Danny keeps a runner set up on my district iOS application. They might even have a default for that, which is a great question. So, okay, so iOS. Let me see. So that's actually almost more of a question of what kind of testing. And there really is a whole pile of options for doing automated testing. Let's see if I can get a quick. Yes, exactly, Lucas. And that's so our team created one because it allowed us to put some better security around who the GitLab runner talks to, right? So GitLab can call the runner, and the runner itself has permissions to get into servers that nobody else has from anywhere else. And we're using git.doit in order to call that runner. So we registered it. And that's yeah. Let me check about the test automation question though. So okay, so I'm gonna test. Let's see. Okay. So here is one example. There's probably better resources in this, Daniel. But t- uh, and take a look around for this, right? So if you look for GitLab testing, it's probably GitLab testing iOS and see what you get. Um, so this one specifically is called static analysis. There are dynamic analysis ones. Um, and where is it? Somewhere on this page. If I keep, yeah, okay. So if you scroll down on that page itself, there's a bunch of stuff about which. I should just share this. Sorry. Um, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff about which languages are supported. Sorry, let me go back to the top here real quick. So this is the SAST static application security testing example. Um, I'll roll by a bunch of this, but yeah. So then we get into languages, and then they tell you right which analyzer might have it, and just you guys. There's a lot of documentation. They do a pretty good job with keeping track of what stuff is. Um, right, like even this. So like for whatever reason, if I wanted to use the advanced SAST for C, they have a reference to their ticket about where they're at with that. Um, right? It's like, how are we doing? When did we want to do this? Um, and that's one of the other like awesome things from just like a visibility standpoint for that organization.
I'm going to just pause right here and say that it's time